taken me a while to even think about writing this down. Honestly, it happened almost 2 years ago now. I was around 26, just starting a new office job after finishing my degree and settling into a pretty predictable routine. Lunch at the same deli every Tuesday, coffee breaks around 3, the usual office chatter. It was all very normal. Looking back, it feels strange how easily I accepted things as they were and how long it took me to realize something felt off. The Tuesdays kept being Tuesdays. Same sandwich, same small talk with old man Hemmings about the baseball scores. It was comfortable. I actually started looking forward to it, that little bit of predictability. Back at my desk, though, things felt different after that with Mark. It wasn't anything he did. Exactly, more what I saw. He was at the printer, same as always, but his back was to me. He reached up, way up, to grab a ream of paper from the top shelf. It wasn't just that the shelf was high, it was that his arm extended, like impossibly. It wasn't a stretch, it was a lengthening, just for a second, maybe 2, but I swear to God it was longer than it should have been. It bent at a joint I didn't even know existed. I blinked, and it was normal again. He turned around, grabbed the paper, didn't seem to notice me staring, just gave a little nod and went back to his workstation. I felt this coldness creep up my spine. I just left, went to the break room, made a coffee, even though it wasn't even 3 o'clock yet. I needed to be around people. I told myself I was tired, that I was probably dehydrated. Stress from the new job, that's all it was. But I kept glancing over at him. He was focused, too focused. And he kept looking back, not directly at me, but in my general direction, like he was checking to see if I was still there. I figured he probably noticed me staring earlier and was just being polite, making sure I wasn't offended or something. He was always a little awkward. I just tried to focus on my work and convince myself I had imagined the whole thing. Tuesday lunch, I almost went, I really did, but I couldn't shake the feeling the way he'd been looking, so I ate at my desk, scrolling through news articles I didn't read. Just something to do. I kept my peripheral vision on his corner. He was there, same as always, head down, typing. But he wasn't eating. He hadn't left his desk all day. Around 4, I needed to print something. Just a quick memo. I deliberately chose the printer on the other side of the office, the one near accounting. It was out of the way. When I got there, the paper tray was full of those little sticky notes, the neon pink and yellow ones, hundreds of them, all blank, just shoved in there, jammed. I started pulling them out, annoyed, and then I noticed something. They weren't just randomly stuffed in. They were arranged, layered, like someone had spent a long time doing it, and on the very bottom layer, just barely visible, was a single sticky note with a word written on it. My name. I ripped it out, heart hammering. I glanced around. He wasn't visible from that angle. I figured maybe someone was playing a prank. New office, someone trying to be funny, but it didn't feel like a joke, it felt deliberate. I walked back to my desk, trying to act normal. I took the long way, down the main aisle past his workstation. He was still typing, but his head was tilted, just a fraction, so he was looking in my direction, not at me, but in my direction. And he was smiling, a small, tight smile, like he knew. I started taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Just a little extra exercise, I told myself. But it wasn't about exercise, it was about not being in the same vertical space as him. I needed air. The stairs felt better, less exposed, but even then I'd catch myself glancing over my shoulder. It was ridiculous. I'm a grown man, but he just watched. I was getting coffee in the 4th floor break room. Empty, thank God. I was pouring sugar into my coffee. Black coffee is just bleak when I felt it. A presence, I didn't turn around right away. Just kept my eyes fixed on the sugar packets. Too much sugar. I always put too much sugar. Then I heard the microwave hum. He wasn't supposed to be on this floor. He's in accounting, 2 floors down. I turned slowly. He was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, watching me. Not a casual glance, just watching. And he was holding something, a small metal toolbox. The kind you'd use for, I don't know, plumbing, electrical work? Oh, he said, his voice flat. "Didn't see you there." He started to walk toward me, slowly. The toolbox didn't look right. It felt wrong, like he shouldn't have it. Maybe he was doing some side work for the building? I'd heard they were behind on repairs. "Just grabbing a snack," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a granola bar. He unwrapped it, still looking at me. Then Mr. Henderson from HR walked in. "Morning, fellas." He blinked, looking from me to him. "Everything all right here?" He smiled, a genuine one this time. "Just getting coffee, Mr. Henderson. Nice morning, isn't it?" He held up the granola bar. Mr. Henderson nodded, a little stiffly. He got a cup of tea, avoided eye contact with both of us, and left. As soon as the door closed, he was back to watching me. The toolbox was still in his hand. I finished my coffee, dumped it, and walked out as fast as I could without running. My heart was doing that thing again, like it was trying to escape. I think he's trying to intimidate me, some weird power play. It's messed up, but maybe if I just ignore him, it'll stop. I called in sick, said I had a migraine. It felt pathetic, even saying it, like I was letting him win, whatever it was, but I couldn't face going back in, not yet. I spent most of the day staring at the security camera app on my phone, linked to the office, just watching the break room. He wasn't there, not for hours. Around 4, I decided I had to go. I had to at least see if my mug was still there. If everything looked normal, I drove faster than I should have. The parking lot was almost empty. Inside, it was cold and eerily quiet. The break room looked fine. My mug was gone, which was probably a good thing. I went to the sink to wash my hands, and that's when I saw it. A small scratch on the tile, right near the baseboard. Like something metal had been dragged across it. It was new. I hadn't noticed it before, and then I remembered the toolbox, the way he'd been holding it, turning it over and over. I went to HR and explained it as best I could, trying to sound rational. Miss Davies listened, her face carefully neutral. She said she'd talked to Mr. Henderson. She also asked if I'd been experiencing any stress. She suggested maybe I was misinterpreting things. She said Mr. Henderson was a bit eccentric, a tinkerer, always carrying tools for odd jobs around the office. It sounded so reasonable, but I knew what I'd seen. I felt it. I asked if we could review the security footage from yesterday morning. She said the system had been experiencing technical difficulties and the footage was unavailable. That's when the fear really set in. It wasn't about a power play. It wasn't about being awkward. He was preparing something and no one was going to help me. It's been years, I guess. I don't really think about timelines much anymore, not like I used to. I changed jobs, obviously, several times. Each time I'd pick a place with open floor plans and lots of people around. Anything but those little partitioned offices, and definitely no break rooms tucked away at the end of hallways. I still can't stand the smell of industrial cleaner. It reminds me of that office, of everything. They used it constantly, trying to keep the place spotless. I used to think it was just Ms. Davies being particular, obsessive even. Now I wonder if it was to cover up something else, something they were trying to scrub away. I haven't been in a human resources department since, not even to ask a question. I just email or find someone else to handle it. It's ridiculous, I know, completely irrational. But the thought of sitting across from someone in HR, the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights, the way they look at you, it's enough to make my palms sweat. I don't go to hardware stores anymore either. Not unless I absolutely have to. The aisles of tools, the glint of metal, it's unsettling. I always imagined Mr. Henderson was building something. A device maybe, some kind of control mechanism. It sounds crazy even now, but that toolbox, the way he'd run his hand over it. He wasn't just fixing things. It's funny, the little things that stick with you. I still check the corners of rooms automatically, just a quick glance to make sure nothing's out of place. It's a habit I don't even realize I'm doing most of the time. I wonder, sometimes, if he ever noticed, if he knew how much it was affecting me. It feels distant now, like a half-remembered dream. But the corners, I still check the corners. It feels strange even typing this out, honestly, because for a long time it just felt like a thing that happened. A few months ago, I was working the late shift at a 24-hour store to save up for a road trip, and my life was pretty predictable. I was 22, dating someone casually, and mostly just went to work, came home, and scrolled through my phone. Looking back, it all seems so normal, and that's what stuck with me all this time. The smell of pine cleaner was always strongest around 3 o'clock in the morning. Old Man Hemlock, the night stock guy, really went to town with it. I was facing the candy aisle, restacking those little impulse buy bags of gummy bears when I noticed it. Not the cleaner, though, that was there too. It was the magazines, specifically the placement of them. We had a rotating display rack, the kind you spin, for automotive magazines. Usually they're just kind of thrown in there, you know. The latest issue on top, a jumble of covers, but these were perfectly aligned. Every single magazine cover facing outward, stacked by issue number, oldest to newest. It wasn't a big deal, really. I figured Hemlock had gotten particular. He'd always been a bit of a neat freak. I gave a little wave in his direction, but he was over by the motor oil, muttering to himself. I shrugged it off, finished the gummies, and moved on to rearranging the chips. That's when I saw him. The guy from a few weeks back, the one who'd messed with the energy drink display. He was studying the greeting card aisle, not picking one out, just staring. And he was smiling. A small, tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. I started to get a weird, prickly feeling on the back of my neck. Okay, I thought, maybe he's planning a big romantic gesture and just trying to pick the perfect card. It wouldn't be the weirdest thing I'd seen. I tried to make eye contact, offer a quick, "Can I help you?" But he was already moving. Past the cards, past the lottery tickets, and heading towards the back. Towards the employee break room. I hadn't realized anyone was even back there. I glanced at the security cameras, but the angle didn't cover that far. My hand instinctively went for the panic button under the counter. I didn't press it. Not yet. It probably was just a customer using the bathroom or maybe lost, but something felt deeply, inexplicably wrong. I didn't press the button. I just watched the cameras, switching between the front and the blind spot. He wasn't visible on either. It felt like he'd vanished. I told myself he'd probably gone to the bathroom in the gas station, figured it out, and left, which was stupid because the bathroom was on the other side of the store. I finished stocking the chips, trying to focus on the bag placement, but my eyes kept drifting towards the break room door. When my break came around, I decided to use it, partly because I needed coffee, mostly because I needed to see what he'd been doing back there. The break room is small, just a table, a microwave, and a fridge covered in magnets. Nothing special, but the coffee pot was on, freshly brewed. I hadn't made coffee since my shift started, and my mug, my stupid chipped mug with a cat on it, was sitting on the table, half full. I definitely hadn't left it there. I always wash it right after using it, always. It felt wrong, like someone had been using my space. I checked the back door, locked. The window was sealed. I started checking everything. The first aid kit, the employee lockers, even the supply closet. Nothing was disturbed, except the vent cover. It was slightly ajar. I hadn't noticed it before, but it wasn't flush with the wall like it should be. Maybe someone had been trying to fix it. Old Mr. Henderson, the manager, is always talking about maintenance, but he'd mention it, wouldn't he? I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. I started taking the long way around when stocking shelves, always keeping the break room in my peripheral vision. I kept thinking about the magazine display, the way the covers had been so neatly aligned, the ones I'd specifically placed out of order. Maybe someone was just really into home decorating magazines. It was a stretch, but better than the alternative. I spent the next hour practically jumping at shadows. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the fluorescent lights sent a jolt through me. I kept glancing at the break room door, half expecting I don't even know what, him. Someone? Nothing. But the feeling, the crawling skin feeling, wouldn't go away. Old Man Hemlock came in for his lottery tickets and his usual pack of smokes. He always complains about his arthritis. Distracting. Thank God, I actually managed a real smile, a normal conversation for 5 minutes. Then, while he was counting his change, I heard it. A scuff. Not outside, not on the sales floor. It came from above, specifically from the ceiling of the break room, like something had shifted in the space between the ceiling tiles and the roof. Hemlock was still muttering about the price of everything, oblivious. I froze. Then a soft thump, not heavy, but deliberate, like someone testing the weight limit. I told Hemlock I needed to check something in the back, practically sprinting for the door. I grabbed the biggest box cutter I could find. It wouldn't do much, but it felt like something, and went for the break room. The door was slightly ajar. Not like I'd left it, but definitely not properly closed. I pushed it open slowly, heart hammering. The vent cover was moving, not falling but subtly, rhythmically tilting, and then a hand, just a small portion of a hand, pale and thin, reached down from the gap. It wasn't reaching for anything, just appearing, retracting, appearing again. I think it was trying to signal me, like it was trapped. Some poor kid, maybe, trying to hide from the cops or something. That had to be it. Before I could even think about calling anyone, the lights flickered violently and died. Total darkness, and then a voice right next to my ear, whisper quiet, "You shouldn't have looked." The emergency lights kicked on, those sickly green bulbs that made everything look wrong. I just stood there, box cutter clutched so tight my hand hurt. It felt stupid holding it, like a plastic spoon against a bear. After 1 or 2 minutes, Mr. Hemlock shuffled in, complaining about the power company. Always happens when the humidity gets up, he grumbled, already heading for the coffee pot. He didn't even seem to notice I was practically vibrating. The police came, of course. 2 officers, young, and mostly interested in filing a report. They checked the vent and poked around in the ceiling space. It was mostly just dust and old insulation. They found some animal droppings and a few dead flies. The officer with the flashlight kept saying, "Probably a raccoon, kid. Happens all the time." They asked about the voice, but I couldn't really explain it, just a whisper. I didn't mention what it said. I didn't want to sound crazy. They dusted for prints and found nothing usable. They asked about anyone who might want to mess with me. I told them no, which was a lie. There's always someone. I tried to get the manager, Brenda, to board up the vent just to seal it off. She laughed it off, saying it was a waste of time and money. "Raccoons are resourceful, honey," she said, patting my arm. "They'll find another way in." I started looking through the old store records. Dusty boxes in the back office. I was trying to find when the last roof inspection was, and if anyone had ever reported anything strange. I found invoices dating back 20 years. Nothing. No mention of ceiling repairs. No complaints about anything. It was like that space hadn't even been noticed for decades. That's when I started thinking maybe it wasn't a raccoon at all. Maybe it was someone who'd been up there the whole time, just waiting. A homeless person. Someone living in the walls. It was the only thing that made sense. But then I remembered the things he'd said. Old man Abernathy. About my cat. About my sister's new job. He couldn't have known those things. I quit that job 1 week later. Brenda wasn't happy. She said I was overreacting, that I was young and needed to toughen up. I told her I'd found something else and didn't bother explaining. I couldn't explain it even now. Trying to, it feels like trying to catch smoke. I moved to a different part of town and got a job at a bookstore. It's quiet mostly, but I still check, every time. It started with hotels, on road trips for work. I'd pull back the bedspread, look under the bed and inside the closet. Just a quick glance. Then I started checking the vents. Every single vent. I know it's ridiculous. There aren't usually vents in hotel rooms, but I still look for a shadow, a glint of metal, anything. I thought for a while that it was about Abernathy, that he'd somehow gotten someone to follow me, to harass me. Maybe he was some kind of local weirdo with connections, a small-time crook that made the most sense. It had to be something explainable. Now I just think about how he knew about my aunt's illness, the one I hadn't even told my parents yet, about the chipped mug I used for coffee, the one my grandmother made. He'd just mentioned things, casual things, like he was making conversation. I don't stay in Airbnbs anymore. Too much access, too many blind spots. I've started carrying a small flashlight, even when I'm just walking to the car. It feels silly, but it feels necessary. It's been almost 5 years, and I still check the vents. I wonder how long he'd been watching before he started talking. I've been meaning to write this down for a while. Honestly, probably close to 2 years now. Back then, I was working a pretty standard office job, still in my late 20s and trying to save up for a longer trip abroad. To make ends meet, I'd sublet my apartment whenever I traveled for work. And last time, I used one of those online tenant finding services. It all seemed completely normal at the time, just a way to cover rent while I was gone, and I didn't think much about it until later. The mail was still there, thankfully. A small stack, mostly bills, and a postcard from my aunt. I almost hadn't bothered checking. After that, I just wanted to get inside and lock everything up. But then the bills need paying, right? It felt stupid to let it sit. Old Man Hemlock was out front, watering his petunias. He always did, every evening without fail. He gave me a nod and a little wave. It was the way he stopped waving that got to me. He just froze, hand halfway in the air, watering can suspended, eyes locked on me. Not at me exactly. Through me maybe. It lasted a long time, or felt like it, long enough for my skin to prickle. I forced a smile, a quick one, and snatched the mail. He didn't blink, he didn't move, just observed. I practically ran inside, fumbling with the keys. I locked the deadbolt, then the chain. It felt ridiculous, overreacting, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I kept the curtains drawn for the rest of the night, telling myself he was probably just lost in thought. Old people do that, right? They get a faraway look. Still, I checked the peephole every few minutes, and each time he was there, tending those damn flowers, always facing my door. The subletter, David hadn't mentioned a difficult neighbor. I'd asked. He said the building was quiet, mostly retirees. Maybe Hemlock just didn't like young people. Maybe he was always like this, and I just hadn't noticed on previous trips, probably. It had to be something explainable. But even now, thinking about it, the stillness, it wasn't normal. It wasn't just forgetfulness. I tried to get back into a routine. I pretended everything was normal. Easier said than done with Hemlock out there. I started taking the stairs, avoiding eye contact, and varying my arrival times. Just little things. I even started leaving for work earlier, before he was usually out with his gardening. It felt pathetic sidestepping an old man, but the way he looked at me wasn't right. Yesterday, I realized something else. I always grab a coffee on the way to work. Same place, same time. Yesterday, there was a guy ahead of me in line. He was wearing a jacket almost exactly like mine. Same color, same style. I didn't think much of it at the time, just a coincidence. Then when I got to my desk, Sarah from accounting said, "Oh, you got the blue jacket too. David was just showing me his yesterday. He said he found a great deal." David, my subletter. He doesn't even know I wear this jacket. I've barely spoken to him beyond the initial key exchange. I went back to the apartment during my lunch break, just to check. I peeked through the peephole. Hemlock wasn't there, but David was. He was watering my plants. My plants. I hadn't even mentioned I had plants. I'd barely unpacked. He looked up, caught me looking. He didn't flinch, just a small, almost knowing smile. He said loud enough for me to hear through the door, "Just making sure everything's thriving while you're away. You mentioned how important they were." I never mentioned anything about plants. I think he's just being overly friendly, trying to be a good subletter, taking initiative. Maybe he overheard me on the phone talking about wanting to get some plants. Maybe. It's probably that. But the jacket, and now this. I skipped my afternoon coffee run. I took the long way home. I didn't go back to the apartment. Not that evening. I told work I had a family emergency. It was pathetic. I just kept walking, bought a terrible coffee from a diner 2 towns over, and sat there until almost 12 a.m. I kept replaying the image of him kneeling amongst those plants. Plants I didn't own. The next morning, I called the building manager, Mrs. Henderson. She was surprisingly dismissive. "Oh, Mr. Bell? Lovely young man, very conscientious, said you were traveling on business, offered to water your plants." Plants? Again. "Mrs. Henderson, I don't have plants." There was a pause. "Well, he said you did. Said you mentioned orchids. A beautiful collection," he said. I hung up. I felt sick. It wasn't just the plants anymore, was it? It was the way he anticipated things, the way he filled in the gaps. I thought maybe he's a scammer, trying to get access to my belongings, staging things to look like I'm neglecting the apartment. It made a twisted kind of sense. I went to the police. They took a report, but they mostly just looked at me like I was the problem. They said subletting arrangements are civil matters. I decided I needed to get my things, just grab the essentials and get out. I let myself in with my key, expecting I don't know what. I found the apartment spotless, too spotless, and a note on the kitchen counter. Just popped out to the hardware store. Needed to get some fertilizer for your orchids. Back in 1 hour. Underneath, in smaller writing, "Don't worry, I've taken care of everything." Then I noticed it. My jacket. The one I'd worn the day I saw the other man. The one identical to mine. It wasn't hanging in the closet. It wasn't on the coat rack. It was gone. And the front door, it wasn't fully closed. Just a crack. I could have sworn I locked it. I tried changing the locks. That was the first thing. I called a locksmith and explained I'd lost the keys. He gave me a look like I was being stupid and said it was a simple rekey, no problem, except he asked if I'd recently had any maintenance done. He said the existing lock looked unusually clean, almost new. I hadn't touched the locks. He finished, gave me the new keys, and I tested it. Double-checked. It felt better, I guess, for about 1 hour. Then I noticed the mail, bills, junk, a postcard, and tucked in with it, a small white envelope. There was no return address inside. A single orchid bloom pressed flat. It was perfect. I just stared at it. It wasn't threatening. Not exactly. Just knowing. Like a silent message. Maybe he's trying to apologize? For the note? For the jacket? Trying to show he's interested in the same things as me? It was insane. I knew it was. But I kept turning it over in my hands, trying to find some logic. I started going through everything. My bank statements, old emails, even my phone records. I was looking for anything I might have mentioned, anything he could have picked up on. It was exhausting, and then I found it. A news article buried in the local section from almost 1 year ago. There was a small fire at a nursery just outside of town. They'd lost their entire orchid collection. The owner's name was the same as the guy I sublet to. He wasn't just mirroring me. He was scavenging, picking up the pieces of someone else's life. And I was the next collection. I didn't understand why, but I knew, with a coldness that settled deep in my chest, that this wasn't random. This wasn't just a weird coincidence. This was deliberate. And he wasn't going to stop. It's been years, 7 or perhaps 8. I stopped keeping track. Honestly, the police closed the case after a while. They said no evidence of a crime. It was easier to say that than admit they didn't understand. I moved, of course. I sold the house. I couldn't stay there. Every corner felt occupied. He disappeared right after that. It was after the second note. The note wasn't really a note. It was a photograph. It was a picture of me walking my usual route to the grocery store. It was taken from across the street. The photo wasn't good. It was blurry, but it undeniably showed me. I went to the police and showed them everything. The jacket, the orchid, the article about the nursery, and the photo. They seemed more concerned with me being a stalker, obsessing over this man. I argued, but what could I do? I started to think maybe he wasn't trying to replace me. Maybe he was just lonely. Someone who'd lost everything in that fire and just wanted to connect with someone who appreciated the same things. It was a pathetic thought, but it was easier than the alternative. It was easier than believing someone was deliberately dismantling my life. I still check my mail differently. I sort through it over the kitchen sink, always looking for an envelope without a return address, and I avoid nurseries. It's not because I'm scared, not exactly. But the smell just brings it all back. It's the heavy, sweet scent of orchids. I used to love it. Now if I even drive past one, I hold my breath. I haven't bought a single houseplant since. It's silly, I know. But some habits, even the new ones, just stick. It's been so long, but I still can't bring myself to wander the garden section anymore.